Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be talking with you guys. I cannot get my words together today about this topic because my God, is it needed. I am really seeing the obsession with like the labeling of feminine and masculine on social media. And it is frankly fucking mental. And it's actually not helping us to be in our feminine as women by any means. So we're going to be diving into that today. I did an episode a little bit ago, maybe like in March or April. I filmed it when I was in Sydney. I don't know when it came out, maybe March or April. We can link it below. That was talking about like the over obsession with feminine and masculine and how like we need to stop putting labels on things. And I was talking about how something that actually can be masculine, you can make it more feminine. So I'm gonna not repeat myself in regards to what I talked about in that episode. I'm gonna kind of go on from that. But that is a really good episode to be listen to. You guys literally have devoured that one. The stats on it are really, really good. So today we're going to be expanding a little bit more on that. We're going to go into my philosophy with feminine embodiment and kind of feminine healing and really talking about what I believe is required in order for you to become quote unquote her and in order for you to become that version of yourself that you want to be. So we're going to go through a few different pieces. What really spurred me to come on and talk about this was recently we had like a podcast clip on my Instagram, and I said fuck at the in one of the seconds of the podcast clip, like nothing new here. And this woman commented on it, and she said, hold on, I have the screenshot right here. Can't be feminine with a mouth like that, cussing like a sailor, not feminine. As though, this comment made her more feminine and more mighty and like more, I don't know, above me. And what was so interesting is like, actually, these kind of comments often will really just prove what I'm talking about. So in this situation, this just proves her lack of feminine embodiment and also just her own self-judgment that she's then projected on other people. It's kind of like when feminists are all like feminism, 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 and then they see a post about a woman being like, I love relying on my husband, and they rip her down. I'm like, not so feminist now. Like now you're not supporting another woman. So anyway, so I basically put it on my Instagram story and commented on it saying that this is the problem with feminine embodiment nowadays, where people are, thinking that the stereotypical ideology of being feminine, or the stereotypical kind of appearance of feminine energy is feminine, and anything that doesn't fit into that box is not feminine. And so we're going to talk about that today because it could not be further from the truth. Then of course she proceeded to delete the comment because obviously my response kind of proved that she was not in her feminine and whatever. So anyway, everyone was trying to find the comment, and I'm like, yeah, she deleted it. So it is really coming to my attention that a lot of us are getting kind of sucked into these stereotypical ways of what feminine and masculine is. And this is then actually causing more problems than it solves. So being stereotypically feminine doesn't actually mean that you're necessarily in alignment. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are deeply happy and that you are, even really being your authentic self. Because what truly makes a woman feminine and in her feminine energy is letting herself shine. Because that is what gives her, radiance, magnetism, warmth, softness, tenderness. When we hide ourselves, when we think that we have to be different in order to please others or to be accepted or to be liked or to fit in, we literally lose the sense of life and the sense of self and alignment that we need to be having in our bodies. So our essence, so our feminine essence is really there and can be felt. And that's why the before and after pictures that my clients take are so profound, because you can literally feel and see the difference in like their light. You can see the difference in their body language and their eyes and their muscles and the tension in their body and how they stand and their smile and how their eyes are now more open. And then energetically, you can really feel and actually kind of see the energy of now how bright they are shining. And it's not just because they're in their feminine, quote unquote, like in the stereotypical ideology of the idea of what it means to be feminine. It's actually because they are now unapologetically themselves. And as a result of being unapologetically themselves, they now feel safe to really exude these more feminine qualities. So going on from this comment, and I see this comment in so many different ways, of just women. It's often women, obviously men are in there sometimes too, but like it's like 10% of the time they're actually caring about what we're doing. Most of the time it's just us putting each other down. And if it's not saying, oh, cussing like a sailor isn't feminine, it's something else that they're saying. For example, it's so stupid that you're relying on him. Just wait until he go cheats on you, or just wait till he becomes bankrupt. It's just this, like, you look at the comment threads of these things on Instagram, and it's just like this projection of women's insecurities onto other women to make themselves feel like they're more right, they're more mighty. It's literally giving them an illusion of safety, and that what they're doing and how they're living their life is more right than how you're living your life. So if I really wanted to like dissect this comment from this chick and add more, I would also be saying, so I'm saying it to you guys on the podcast, that a woman who feels the need to fit into stereotypical boxes of being feminine really has a pile of trauma that makes her feel like she has to be somebody else in order to please others and be accepted and safe and loved. She's probably afraid of being abandoned. And so, as a result of that, she thinks that she's less likely to be abandoned if she portrays a particular image to the people in her life. So, she probably lacks self love, lacks self respect. The self respect, often the missing piece. People can be like, oh, self love, self love. What about self respect? And she definitely, I don't think, is confident in who she is, because a person that is truly confident in who they are not projecting their thoughts, how they think people should live, what they think is right or wrong onto anybody else, because they understand that right or wrong, black and white, like it's so subjective. It's so based on your own experience. What I think is right or wrong could be different to what you think is right or wrong, and neither is actually correct. They're both correct, and maybe they're both incorrect, right? But no, like, the only people that are defining right or wrong is us. So when we're looking at somebody else, we have to take our own judgments off, because they could be doing what they think is right, and who are we to say that is wrong? So, kind of besides the fact that asking an Australian to no longer swear is like asking an Italian to no longer eat pasta or basil or tomatoes or whatever, this comment is really just suggesting this issue of today, of what I'm seeing more and more, of women trying to do the right thing for themselves, of getting more into their feminine, right? That's the key thing. It's like we're trying to do the right thing for ourselves, which is why I'm doing this episode. You're trying to get into your feminine. You're trying to let go. You're trying to have more magnetism. You're trying to get yourself out of burnout. But you're actually just taking yourself out of one box and putting yourself into another box of what you think is right, probably based on what you've seen from what somebody else has said on social media, or what you've read about, like, this is what it means to be feminine on Pinterest or in a book or whatever it is. So this really served me as such a beautiful reminder, for all of you as well, that being feminine is not about a look. It's not about the way you dress. It's not about how you do your hair. It's not about how you talk. It's not about how you walk. And sure, you know, after doing the healing work that allows you to feel safe and being your truest self and being your most expressed self and really shining your light and actually being seen, you might decide to dress in maybe a more stereotypically, quote unquote, feminine way, or maybe you behave slightly differently, but you would only start doing that if that felt like the truest expression of you. It's kind of like when we go through different seasons of our lives, and like, you go from like your single girl season to then like your relationship season, and all of a sudden you are dressing a little bit differently. You are baby behaving a little bit differently. Your Pinterest page looks different. Your explore page on Instagram looks different. Or when we're going through the wedding season, or when you're becoming a mom, things kind of change. Like now, when I'm dress shopping, I'm thinking of different things than what I thought about 3 years ago. But that's not inauthentic. It would have been inauthentic to the version of me 3 years ago, but I'm not that version anymore. So you don't need to stay in this same version of yourself for the rest of your life. Right. So it's always about just like checking in with ourselves. Is what I'm doing right now in alignment? Is it the truest expression of me? Does this feel right in my body? Okay. And so, to be honest, as I've continued to evolve and mature and go through these different seasons of my life and welcome all sides of my feminine expression and mature really through my life. And I've got a book coming out, and my wedding is coming up, and all of these things. I've leaned into more of my soft, motherly kind of side. 5 years ago, it was a lot more authentic for me to be embracing more of my, let's just say, quote unquote, slut side. Not because I was like necessarily sleeping around with a million dudes, nothing wrong with that either, but more like that's what felt really true for me. And it's important that I express that side. It's important that maybe you potentially express that side, because all these different sides of us then build the current version of us. All these different flavors of ourselves then allows us to come into the version that you are right now. So we need to make sure as well that we're not putting ourselves in a box and thinking that we have to stay in that box for the rest of our lives as well, because that isn't serving us. That's not serving our growth. That's not serving like our own evolution as a person. And it's also not being authentic to us, because what feels authentic, what feels true, is going to be developing and changing over time. So when we think about like the feminine and masculine and those kind of labels that we're putting on a lot of things, making somebody else comfortable is not feminine or masculine. It's actually just being a people pleaser, because your past, like your wounds, make you feel like if you please others, you guys know this, you'll be safer, not be abandoned, not be judged, not be rejected, not be shamed, etc. So we need to make sure that we're not like defining things as feminine or masculine when it then literally takes us out of our fullest expression, because it's this kind of behavior of the labeling and not being authentic and not actually tuning into our bodies. It's this kind of behavior that really got women here in the first place, where they felt suppressed, put into a box, and like they weren't free to actually like be who they wanted to be. So if you are longing to be the truest expression of you, where you feel super at home with yourself and you can kind of pass this authenticity and full acceptance of yourself onto your children, stop labeling things. We're going to go into this more in a second. Like, stop labeling things feminine or masculine that just don't serve you. And again, listen to the episode I did back in March, because that also kind of expands on this. But we're going to go into this a little bit more in regards to like my philosophy on feminine embodiment. For those of you that haven't watched my new masterclass, I made another one. Yep. I'm loving them. The Blueprint to Feminine Embodiment. Make sure that you watch that. It will be really helpful in you also making sure that you're not going down this kind of rabbit hole of feminine, masculine energy in a way that's actually suppressive to you, because you do not want that. So in the masterclass, what I've gone through is internal and external safety, and like the effect on how that then influences your body's ability to relax into receptivity. I go into why it's essential to heal from your past before you actually try to fully embody your feminine energy, and the first thing to be doing when you're wanting to feel safe in your feminine energy. I go into like how all the doing things to be more feminine that you see on social media isn't actually the full truth. I go into like the relationship with your masculine and how that's affecting your feminine. And then I go into also like just stepping into your femininity and how that then enables us to have more ease with manifestation. So if you haven't already watched that, or if you want to watch it again, the link to that is below. And I would highly recommend that you guys do. It's like 2 hours and a bit. It was so long and it was so juicy. And seriously, it just like sums up so much of what I've been talking about for such a long period of time around trauma, feminine energy, self-expression, people pleasing, fear of being seen, all into one kind of nutshell. So let's go into what I was just saying before about the not being obsessed with labels. So when I'm saying not being obsessed with labels, it's not because the labels don't sometimes serve us, because it can be helpful to sometimes be like, this is feminine, this is masculine. But when it becomes unhelpful is when you feel like, oh, because that's a quote unquote masculine thing to do, I've then been in my masculine all day. Or when you have labels around things, so then you're judging your friends because she's quote unquote being masculine. Or this is a good one, when you have labels around things like, oh, drawing a boundary and saying no is quote unquote masculine. So I can't say no to my man because then I'm going to be the one wearing the pants in the relationship. I'm going to do another episode on this probably in about 2 months. You guys will have it after the wedding, about why it's essential to say no in your romantic relationship. I did a Instagram story on this a little bit ago, where basically I had a question some of you might remember this. I had a question around like, why isn't your fiance a like 50-50 partner in the business? And one, I was like, you don't even know how the business is structured back end, but whatever. I basically answered it and I shared that it's really important for me to not be doing things out of obligation because that would just cause resentment in the relationship. And I'm the one that spent 8 years building this business, if not longer, because like it took me a long time to get into it, which I'll talk about in another episode coming up about finding your purpose. So you have that one to look out for as well. But that would actually build resentment in the relationship. Like, I don't want him to be 50-50. That doesn't feel comfortable for me because I'm the one that's putting the blood, sweat, and the tears. I don't feel okay with him just, coming in and getting 50% when it's like he's never worked in this, area before. He didn't even know this existed. He's never done any kind of entrepreneurship. Like, that would be a very, very dumb business decision. And so this lady basically commented back saying how me drawing that boundary and me not letting him be 50-50 is so in my masculine, and I'm so out of integrity, and I should be, having him as a 50-50 partner because that would be the feminine thing to do. And I was like, whoa, hold up, Susan. Hold up, Susan. The fact that you think saying no to a man and not doing something out of obligation and actually knowing what behavior would cause resentment and therefore not doing that, listen to that again if you need to. The fact that you think that is masculine, we have a problem. Because ladies, it is so important for you to understand, and even for the men listening, like get this through your head for the women that you're in relationships with. A woman in her feminine is not a woman that just says yes to everything. She's not a woman that doesn't speak up. She's not a woman that just like bottles up fucking resentment and pretends everything's okay and has a smile on her face. No, a real like feminine woman is acquainted with all sides of her. That means the rage in her, that means accepting her anger, that means all of her dark side and also all of her light side. Like a powerful feminine woman, oh, she will scare you a little bit. Seriously, when you've seen a lioness protect her cub, are you scared? Like, yeah, it's fucking scary. When you've even seen a human mother protect their baby, like she's coming out. Like, you're seeing the true her and it's fucking hot. I'm sorry, it is attractive. Not, I'm sorry. It is attractive. It is sexy. It is a turn on when a woman is just all of her, like fully all of her. And part of being a feminine woman, and part of what I know all of you want to be able to feel, is that you are highly respected. That when you walk into a room, it's like you command respect without having to say a single thing. And all of these ways that you engage outside of when you walk into that room builds your energetic fields that allows people to then just immediately know, oh yeah, don't fuck with her, or this is what she likes, or these are her boundaries, or this is how you do talk to her and how you don't talk to her. It's like people just know. And it's because of the way that you carry yourself and the energy around you. And the way that you carry yourself and the energy around you is built up from all of the years of the embodiment of your feminine energy, the embodiment of your boundaries, the embodiment of the no, the embodiment of not doing things out of obligation. And so when you're just saying yes to things you actually want to say no to, you're not being feminine or masculine. You are being a people pleaser. Like, let's take the labels out. Well, I'm labeling you as a people pleaser, but I'm saying take the label out of feminine or masculine. What you are doing is you are in a fawn response. Saying yes when you don't want to is not a feminine thing. That is like, it's not feminine and it's not masculine at all. So everyone just get that out of your head. Because if you want to be a highly valued woman, which you do, and if you want to be a self-respected woman, and honestly, if you want to be a woman that engages in healthy behavior, which we all do right here, that means that you have to get comfortable speaking up for yourself so that you don't end up being in a situation with so much resentment. Because when we talk about resentment, so like in this example that I was giving you guys from what this chick said, so when we talk about resentment, you have a part to play in the resentment being built. And so in this example that I gave you guys, my part to play in this resentment, if it was being built, which it isn't because I didn't just say yes when I meant no, this resentment that would have been built would have been a result of me not speaking up, of me saying yes, be a 50% partner when I meant absolutely fucking not. So it is your responsibility to prevent resentment just as much as it's the other person's responsibility. So this is the thing. It's like you think that you're being like sweet and soft and warm and caring by saying yes, when you mean no. But then what happens in 5 years' time? Now you're an angry, bitter bitch because you abandoned yourself 5, 10 years ago. Now, obviously, when we're children and when we're teenagers and we don't have these tools, we don't know. But you're listening to this episode, so now you do know. You do know that going forward, your no is powerful. Like the feel the power in your body of the no. And if the no feels scary, then that is something that you need to work on. Because my intention for all of you is that the no turns you on. The no makes you fucking horny. I'm not joking. Like when you feel that no in your body, it's just like, yes, like it feels so good because you actually feel like you know somatically what that no feels like. And if you've grown up in a family where you've constantly had to be in the fawn response is basically to people pleasing. The fawn response in order to feel safe and to be safe, maybe even to actually physically be safe, then you may not even know what no feels like in your body. And so it's like you don't even know what you're missing out on. Like you don't even know how good it feels. And so being able to work on that is really, really important. So when we get obsessed with the labels of feminine or masculine, we then take ourselves out of our authentic self. So right now, what is something that you are thinking, oh, I should do this or I shouldn't do this because it's feminine or because it's masculine? Take the label off it. Do you want to do it? Now, no one wants to do taxes, but taking those situations out of it. Do you want to do it? And so if we're thinking about, for example, do you want to get ahead with work this week? Even though that might be quote unquote a masculine thing for some people. Well, if you understand that the masculine turns the feminine on, and so actually getting ahead with work would make you feel so much more relaxed, fucking do it. Right? So again, when we are getting obsessed with labels, we end up like micromanaging our own behavior and microanalyzing, which is not a helpful thing at all. And this is where personal development can kind of go into that dark side. I did that episode recently on the dark side of personal development, where we can get so obsessed with the way in which we behave. We can get so obsessed with like having a perfect, conversation, having tantric sex every night, feminine and masculine. We can get so obsessed with like conscious communication that we actually forget to be human. Seriously, we forget to be human. And that doesn't actually feel authentic to us. It doesn't feel good for us. It doesn't feel good for other people in our lives either. Nobody wants to be with a robot. Nobody wants to be with Mrs. Perfect conscious communication all the time. We want to feel each other. Like in your relationship, I want to feel my partner's like rage. I want to feel my partner's boundary. I want to feel him. I don't want to just like be robots and trying to be perfect all the time. Like that isn't human. Just like I want him to feel me. I want him to feel my pain. I want him to feel my anger. I want him to feel my boundary. I want him to feel my pleasure. I want him to feel my happiness. When we can't hold the darker sides within ourselves, it becomes very hard to then hold the darker sides in other people. And also, like speaking of labels, like who says it's fucking dark, right? I know it's kind of, again, some of these things help us to also just understand concepts a lot better. But even if I was to go into that, for example, being angry isn't darker. Being angry isn't bad. Being like having anger, having rage isn't some bad, dark emotion. Often when we think of like bad and dark, it's like we feel like we have to hide it. It's shameful. When we instead realize that everything, this is the key thing, when we realize everything is neutral and we're the ones adding the definition to it, it really does change the game. So when you realize anger is neutral, you're the one that is actually adding that anger is bad. Now you've made anger a bad thing. But when you make anger just something healthy and it's actually really good to release, now it's a healthy and really good thing to release. Yes, everything has a different frequency, but taking the frequency out of it, right? We're talking about how you mentally label these things, how you label tasks, how you label chores around your house, how you label to-do list items or things that you have to do. Are you holding yourself back because you're saying one thing is feminine and one thing is masculine, for example? Are you saying that you making the advancement on your husband is actually a masculine thing and that he should be the one to constantly, be initiating sex with you? Depends the way that you do it. Does it feel fun? Does it feel sexy? Does it feel enjoyable to initiate in that moment? If it does, then fucking initiate. Because not initiating in that moment, if it felt so sexy and just right, you are literally then suppressing a part of your expression in that moment. right? If I was constantly trying to be like Miss Perfect, not swear, say the right thing all the time, please everybody, I would literally be biting my tongue. I'd be inhibiting my expression. We ain't doing that, right? I'm going to pick and choose what I'm expressing sometimes, depending on the crowd, but I'm not going to be like, you know, I'm not going to be pushing down and suppressing a part of myself just to make everybody else feel more comfortable. Okay. So when I'm talking about the embodiment of feminine energy, for those of you that don't know what the word embodiment really means, you don't kind of get it. So what it means is like, are you actually living something out? So what it means to embody something is when you've taken on this concept, when you understand it, do you then actually do it? Or is it just an understanding, but you don't do it? And so when I'm talking about feminine embodiment, it's not just about, feminine embodiment is not just being warm and soft and nurturing. It's also, do you speak up? Do you, activate your sexuality when you want to? That is then the following through piece. That is then actually what you're doing in your life. For those of you needing an extended payment plan for Queen Alchemy, and maybe that's been a barrier to entry of why you haven't been able to join Queen Alchemy in the past because you've needed a longer payment plan, because we have such a gap right now, thanks to the Christmas holidays, and then also because of my book coming out and then the wedding and all of those things, we are able to offer a super extended payment plan right now for Queen Alchemy. This will not be happening again because usually there is never this much of a break between two rounds. So if you have been wanting to join for a long time, do not self-sabotage this. The earlier that you join Queen Alchemy, the longer the payment plan is. So if you join, for example, in August, you will be able to get, I think, an 8-month payment plan, if I'm correct. So the longer that you wait and the closer we get to when we actually are going to be starting Queen Alchemy, which is March next year, we'll probably launch it in February. Well, yeah, we'll launch it in February. So the longer that you wait to join Queen Alchemy, as in the sooner we get to actually starting the next round, then the less we can help you with those long-term payment plans. I know that lots of you want the long extended payment plans. So now's your choice to jump on them. If you go to the website page and then you just enroll, like you click enroll now at the very top, you'll then be able to choose your payment plan option when you fill in the form. And you can also join Queen Alchemy now and pay in full if you want to as well, or do a shorter payment plan. You don't have to join Queen Alchemy now with a long payment plan. If you want to join now so you have plenty of time to dig into all of the materials so you're super ahead before we start the live stuff, you can do that too. All right, back into the episode. Another one could be you understand that being connected to your breast, for example, is really important in regards to being connected to your feminine energy. But do you actually do it? Do you actually connect to that part of yourself? That doesn't mean you have to sit down in bed for like 30 minutes every day and feel your tears. That's not what I'm saying. So, and it's making it your own. It's doing what actually feels authentic to you. But do you actually then live that out? Or do you just know this concept, but not actually do it? So, an example of this that I'm going to go into actually more in an upcoming episode about a bit about like how I manifested my fiance, about to be husband, is, for example, a lot of women will, be like, oh, I want, this dream man. I want to feel this way in my relationship. I want a really masculine presence, blah, blah, blah. But then what becomes very challenging is the embodiment piece of it, because they realize, oh, I'm actually just wanting a woman. Like what I'm wanting is not actually what you think you want is a man. But then when it comes to it, it's actually kind of hard and confronting because like men want space, we want connection. And so then if you're in your feminine, the embodiment piece then of it is actually staying in your feminine, staying in surrender, staying in an open heart, and not getting not micromanaging everything and trying to control everything to make to make him not want space anymore because you don't want space. So the embodiment is the actual doing of the task. Do you stay in yourself? Do you stay in your authenticity? Do you stay in your boundaries? Do you stay in your self-worth? Do you stay in your self-respect? Do you stay in, your feminine energy? Or do you let that waver when push comes to shove, when life actually happens? So that's like the embodiment piece of it. So for example, one of my embodiment pieces of it is that I continue swearing, because that is literally just part of me. It is just, I have to bite my tongue depending on some interviews that I do, but it is just part of me. And so part of my feminine embodiment is keeping that and not silencing that part of myself because it makes some people uncomfortable, because you're always going to make some people uncomfortable. And I'm not trying to fucking please others that like don't resonate with what I'm saying, or that can't kind of move past that. And so part of my embodiment, my feminine embodiment of actually accepting all of my authenticity, is accepting that part of myself and not changing to fit in with other people. So that is like the actual like embodiment of it kind of thing. Um, and so just to kind of wrap up on this point, and then I want to go into independence for a second before we wrap up the episode, is not being able to say no. Sorry, rewind. Being able to say no is not masculine. Saying no is not masculine. It is feminine and it's masculine, right? It's neither. It's just what respectful human beings do, saying no. So notice some of the other things that you've defined as feminine or masculine that maybe aren't serving you. And let's change those. Let's take the label off. They're not feminine and they're not masculine. Because at the end of the day, it's about how you do everything. So I could say no in a super masculine way, or I could say no in a feminine way. And my no in a feminine way, by the way, doesn't mean like it's soft, airy, and like, oh, would it be okay if I say no? Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm not also being a bitch, or I'm not also being really controlling and really like, I've got control over this and I'm taking the lead on this situation and it's my way or the highway. And that isn't even necessarily masculine anyway. That's just like kind of unhealthy behavior. But if we were to get into the nitty-gritty, you could say no in a very masculine way that's still healthy, right? That's still completely fine. And it would really be asserting power and dominance and control in a healthy way. And then you could say no in a really soft, sweet, nurturing, loving, body focused kind of way if you were to stay in your feminine. And again, getting obsessed with those things could then inhibit you from actually just being authentic with yourself and saying no, because then you're so worried about saying no the right way that then that prevents you from just saying no at all. So as a starting point, just say no. And if you fuck up the first few times and you don't do it in a really nice way, that's okay. You're learning. But just start by saying no. And don't say it in this way of like, well, I don't want to upset people. So how can I say this really, 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 really nicely? Instead, swap it to this. I want to say no. And how can I say it in a way where I still respect myself and other people may not love it, but they can respect me for it? That is a powerful way to think about things. Rather than how can I say this in a way that where everyone's going to still like me? How am I going to say this in a way where everyone can still respect me? Because people can like not fully love you, but respect you. People could be like, oh, that was harsh, but respect you for it, especially if you're a boss. We can't always be like, soft and warm and nice and airy fairy, like we're running a fucking business, or, we're running a whole team of how many, 50 employees or whatever it is. And so we don't always have the energy and the bandwidth and the time to be like, so nice. And how was your weekend? And how was this? We just have to get like cut to the chase. And so if you're then constantly thinking about, I don't want to upset people, I don't want to upset people, you're draining so much of your energy, rather than how can you just stay respected as a boss? Because when you look at actually the research on like what makes people feel valued and stay at a company, it's never about my boss is so nice. It's about like, I feel respected, I feel appreciated. It's actually really about working things. It's never about, I love my boss. She's such a sweetheart. She always brings these, like she always brings constructive criticism to me in a really, really soft, warm way. One of the things that people want that keeps them at a job on that list was constructive criticism, and not in a nice, warm, soft way. So, even for those of you that struggle to receive constructive criticism or to receive feedback, that's your own stuff from your childhood of not feeling, you know, safe to not be perfect or to have done something wrong, and can you still stay regulated and feel safe? And that's your own stuff from your childhood. So doing the healing work not only benefits your sex life and benefits your dating life and romance and all of that. Like, yeah, the healing work benefits you in the bedroom, but it also benefits you in the boardroom. That's a fucking quote. The healing work also benefits you in rising up in your career if you want to, or getting your dream job. because so many employers now know it is not about like what you've done at uni. It is about personality. It's about the way that you take feedback. It's your communication. It's your perseverance. It's your determination, your ambition. It's your teamwork. It's the way that you communicate. It's the way that you can like, just accept feedback and not need to make it some personal thing. It's the way that you can have hard conversations and you're able to stay regulated. That is what employers want. So especially if you're one of the younger ones, like coming through, really, really important to do this healing work because it does influence your job and it will make you stand out. Because I think I might have said this in a podcast episode before, or maybe it was in like a team meeting, but I'm quite aware that Gen A, maybe like people that are kind of like 20 right now and younger, whatever that generation is, they are so obsessed with their mental health that it's bad for their mental health. Let me say that again. They are so obsessed. This can go for all of us. When you become so obsessed with your mental health, it becomes bad for your mental health because you're then finding things that don't exist. You're nitpicking problems. You're obsessing about things. You're trying to make things perfect rather than accepting humanness. And I'm seeing this in much younger people of this like obsession with mental health, and it's actually having negative repercussions. Obviously, like COVID and everything has a part to play in that, but if you're young, right, like right now listening to this episode, the healing work is going to make you stand out and it's going to make you successful big time, especially because of the kind of environment that you guys have grown up in, because that obviously influences you. Okay, the last thing that I want to riff on is about not losing your independence, ladies. And I feel like this is going to be a funny thing for me to say around don't lose your independence, still be an independent woman, because on other episodes, I'm like, I'm not an independent woman. I need a man. But I was thinking about this the other night in bed and I jotted some notes down and I wanted to give them to you. So on Friday, you guys are going to get a little nugget episode dropped because I want to keep this as a separate one because it's so juicy. So on Friday, you can look forward to this. It'll be about 5 minutes long, or maybe probably longer. I say 5. Let's see how long it's going to be, around not losing your independence when you are stepping into feminine embodiment. So to wrap up today's episode, my philosophy on feminine embodiment is really a human approach. It is a reasonable approach. It's understanding that you being in your feminine is a result of you being in alignment. You being in your feminine is not a result of you fitting into a box, of fitting into like a stereotypical version of what it means to be feminine, of just being soft, warm, nurturing, mothering, etc. No, you as a woman, if you are a feminine woman, so if you have like your core is feminine, and if you don't know how to decipher whether your core is feminine, if you love when a man leads, and maybe it's hard for you, but you want to love when a man leads, if you love that feeling of like a massive bear hug at the end of the day where you can just fully melt into their arms, if you love the idea, maybe it's hard for you to receive it, but you want to be able to receive it, of a man being like, right, I'm picking you up at 8, here's what we're doing. If that just like melts a part of you inside, maybe your ego finds it hard, but it melts a part of you inside, you have a feminine essence. I'm going to say all of you listening have a feminine essence. I would assume that. This 90% of people do. I've actually, one of my certification students was asking me about this. I've actually never come across, I mean, I wouldn't work with them, I don't think, because it wouldn't make sense. I've never come across in my work a woman that doesn't have a feminine essence because, I mean, like I said, it wouldn't really make sense for them to necessarily be working with me. But, some of us have a easier time just fully dropping into more of that quote unquote stereotypical feminine. And for some of us, we have a little bit of a harder time, or our feminine expression looks different to other people's. And so this is really about like my philosophy on feminine embodiment is creating your own definition of feminine energy, creating your own definition of what it means to be expressed in your feminine energy. And that way you're taking into account your personality, your like fucking star sign, right? Like what is your constitution like? Are you super fiery? Are you super grounded? Are you more of like a wood energy? Are you really watery? It's taking into account all of these things, and it's realizing that we all have unique feminine expression. But the most important thing is staying in alignment with ourselves and not just taking ourselves out of one box and putting ourselves in another box, because that is what got us, not here, but it's what got us to that suppressed state of us all being angry and fighting for our rights in the first place. So let's not do it again. Find your own sense of balance and harmony, not copy mine, find your own.